Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. My name is Cody Sizemore and I'm joined here by my lovely co-host, Maria Casillas. And today we're going to be talking about some spouses who are going rogue. It's actually a little bit of a case study from one of my clients. And I think that it'd just be good to explore, because I think that this kind of thing happens from time to time. So before we get into any of that, though, just want to say a few things. Number one, if this is your first time listening to the show, we just want to say we appreciate you guys checking it out. If you like this episode, feel free to go back and listen to the previous episodes. And if you feel up to it, leave a rating, leave a review, share the show, whatever you got to do. We would really appreciate that because we don't make any money off of this. We don't take any ads from this. So the only way that this show really grows is just through your support. And that kinds of stuff really does go a long way. But if you are someone who's been supporting us and you've been supporting us for quite a while and you listen to the show pretty much every week, we just want to say, hey, thanks. We appreciate you. And you are what we call our every weekers. And you are the reason that we keep going with this. You keep showing up and you keep saying, hey, what about this topic? You keep saying, hey, we really appreciated this past topic. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a text or a message or an email just giving us, some good feedback on things and some constructive feedback from time to time as well, which we also appreciate too. So yeah, just thanks for supporting the show. And a really good way to connect with us so you can give us that kind of feedback or ask questions or even connect with people who are listening to the show as well would be through our Facebook group. And that's free to join. And it's simply called, if you were to type into that little search bar on Facebook, you can type in the Financial Coaches Community by New Money Habits. So just join in there, say hi, ask some questions, and let's rock and roll together. So with all that being said, Maria, welcome in. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really great. Thank you. The birds are singing. It's a beautiful day. Can't complain.
I wish I lived in Arizona.
You need singing birds too? If I could whistle, I would do it for you. But one of the things I've never been able to do is whistle.
Yeah. Out here in Ohio, some people would be like, man, the best way to wake up would just be from the birds singing their songs, chirping out that window, right? It's not how I woke up this morning. I woke up to just some loud thunder, just crazy. So it's super rainy here today, all day.
I'm sorry.
So it is what it is, and I know that you don't really like rain in Arizona. So
no, actually, we love rain in Arizona.
I know,
but
you can have some of mine. So
yeah, we like it because we don't get it very often.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
get it.
Awesome. All right. So yeah. I don't know. I know that we talked about this before in the show, but I have that like alumni group program.
Yes.
Where people go through like my original curriculum, and then if they want to keep going, they have the option to step into this group, right? And this is where this whole case study actually came. Was with a couple that I've been working with for almost 2 years. I would say a little bit over a year and a half. And just to give you some context with them, they've crushed it. Like they've done a fantastic job. When we first started working together, they had I think it was somewhere close to like 40 or 45 grand worth of debt, and they had nothing in their savings, and they were like paycheck to paycheck, the whole nine. And, you fast forward to today and they only have their car payment, which is around like 10 grand. And then they also have like $20,000 in the bank as well. So they've come a really long way. And, we've kind of set things up for them because that's what they were really wanting. That's how, it was important to them. And we had this great plan to essentially get this car paid off probably within the next, 4 to 5 months. And then they can officially become debt free. However, something came up. And unfortunately, the husband fell in love with, of all things, fell in love with a door. A
It
door.
was a really good looking door.
That's what he kept telling me. It's a really, really good door, right? So he brought this up in one of our meetings, and we talked through it because he said, "Hey, like, where we live, there's a lot of high winds and everything like that, and our door is like in really rough shape, like, it's starting to kind of fall apart a little bit, and it's just old, and we just need a new door, right?" And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, you need to get a new door. Fine with me. So let's talk through some options." And we talked through some options. We found some affordable, but also decent quality doors. But then he said, "Hey, my parents actually got this like custom door, and it's like super nice. Like, it has like three different like locking mechanisms, and it's like X amount thick, and it has this titanium thing, and like the design on it's like beautiful, and like all this kind of stuff, right?" And I was
Uh-huh.
like, "Sounds like a great door. Probably a little bit more expensive than a normal door, but it can't be that bad, sure, right?" But then he told me that he got a quote, and the quote was $14,000
Okay.
for a door,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
This is like the main door, right? Like the
Yeah, like the
front
front
door,
door.
not a screen door, not
Yep,
okay.
yep, front door. So we talked through that, and essentially I gave my input to where I was like, I wouldn't I wouldn't purchase a $14,000 door. And I definitely wouldn't do it if you plan on financing it, which he was planning on financing it. And his
Mm.
wife also weighed in and said, "Hey, I also think that this is too much for a door and we should look at different options." Right? Had a whole conversation around that. And then about a month passes, and I find out that he bought this door. But I also found out that it wasn't just that they made the decision to buy this door. I found out that he bought this door without the wife's full approval.
Mm.
So where they landed was that the wife agreed, it's a beautiful door. The wife agreed it would be amazing to have this door. But the wife did not agree on the price. The wife disagreed that they should spend $14,000 on a door. But he went and did it anyways.
Huh.
So before I go into the whole conversation around building off of that, I just want your initial reaction and your initial thoughts, Maria.
Well, my initial reaction is sometimes the prisoners just don't know how to live outside of prison, and so they commit the crime again to get back where they were, where they know the feeling. And it just seems like this individual was so close to freedom, to yeah, I'm just gonna use the word freedom, that he didn't know what the heck to do with that. And
Mhm.
so almost almost intentionally sabotaged that, even but probably at a subconscious level. I think he really does believe that it's this wonderful door and that it's worth it. And, he saw his parents have it and et
100%.
cetera. And he did try to talk to you and tried to talk to his wife, but neither one of you gave him the response that he was hoping for. And so it's almost as if he just wanted to give the illusion of seeking wise counsel,
Mhm.
but fully intended to do what he was going to do regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'll say a few things. Number one, isn't it poetic with what you just said that the thing that he went back into prison with had all these luxurious locking mechanisms, right?
Yeah.
It's a little poetic. Uh, I'll also say this, that I absolutely love this couple. They're amazing people. They have done so, so well up until this point. They're some of my favorite people that I've worked with, probably ever. You know,
Mm, mhm,
so that's why with this decision and this action that was taken, it was very like almost out of character for him.
mhm,
And I was like, what the heck, dude? Like, what's going on? So, I actually called him out on it in that group. So this was a group of, it's him, his wife, me, and, in that meeting, there was like 7 other people in that
'kay,
group. And I put
mhm,
him on the hot seat and, basically just called him out. And I asked him for his input and his perspective. And I asked him to walk me through his line of thinking through everything. And
mhm,
then after that, I asked his wife to do the same thing as far as like her perspective on the situation. And then after that, I asked the group to give their input. And I said, listen, this is what this group is for. Like, I don't want you to sugarcoat anything. I don't want you to hold back. You guys need to give this guy and really this couple some input here. Right.
mhm,
And what he said was basically that when he talked to his wife, she loved the door. She
mhm,
liked the door.
mhm,
She agreed that it'd be nice to have the door.
mhm,
Um, and then when they came out and they, got they worked up like this presentation, they built it out already. And they basically gave him a quote and they said, hey, if you do it today,
mhm.
we'll give you a $4,000 discount. So it was originally an $18,000 door,
Oh, okay.
right? Um,
Mhm,
but if you don't do it today, then it's going to be 18,000. So he said that he tried to call his wife to talk to her, but she was at work and she was busy. So he
uh-huh,
couldn't get the full confirmation. So he just made a quote unquote head of household decision
mhm, mhm,
to buy this door. Right.
mhm,
And I won't go into like the nitty gritty of everything that we discussed and the back and forth because it was a big conversation. Right. But one of the biggest questions that I asked him was I said, okay, well, how much was the savings? He told me it's about 4 grand. And I said, okay, so here's a question for you. Which one is worth more? Saving 4 grand on a front door or having really good communication and respect within your marriage? Which one's worth more? And he was like, well,
For
um,
those of you who can't see Cody's face right now.
he was like, well, having the communication and the respect. And I said, why is that important? And he said, well, Cody, because truthfully, after this decision was made and things were set in motion, I slept on the couch for a couple nights and it's been kind of tense over here. And I'm like,
Mhm,
yeah, man. Yeah. So what's done is done. Like he's locked into a contract. Everything's already in motion. It's done, you know?
mhm,
Um, but I think that what's really important is making sure that he understands that moving forward so that he can, adjust accordingly moving forward. And I also told him, I was like, listen, how would you feel if the roles were flipped? Because you want to talk about head of household and play that role. But I was like, listen, dude, what you just did with this decision is you set the standard. You set the standard that this type of behavior is okay in your marriage. So I know for a
mhm,
fact that your wife wants to pick out and replace all new carpeting in your house. And that's not cheap either. So what if she just decided to get like this luxurious carpeting through the entire house, drop 20 grand, not even ask you your opinion on the style or anything, and just do it? How would you feel? And he was like, I wouldn't be happy about that. I'm like, but you just set the standard. So it's okay for her to do this now.
mhm,
So you want to play that role of like head of household, then you need to set your standard. And you need to not just talk the talk, but you need to walk the walk. Because right now you just gave your wife permission to do something just as you just did. And that is a slippery slope to get you guys right back to where you were before.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the general basis of our conversation. Again, I'm going to pause and I want some feedback.
Well, ironically, my husband and I are looking at doors. I know
I know a really good company.
I know you didn't know that before we jumped in this conversation today, but it's kind of laughable because we're actually just looking at a screen door. We mentioned at the top of today's episode that the birds are chirping and it's a beautiful day. And here in Arizona, one of my favorite things is to be able to have a cross breeze, open windows and doors. And the way that our house is situated, because we decided to close in an office for me, there really is no window that's open to the rest of the home from the front. And so I want to just open our door, but we can't do that unless we put some sort of nice, security screen door. And so my husband has standards and he's like, I don't want the Home Depot kind. And so we've lived here for 5.5, 6 years and have never put one there because he doesn't want the cheap one. And we have not been willing to invest in the more expensive one. But as you're talking, I am just like immediately transported to our conversations that we've been having. And one of them was because the one that we looked at was about $3,000 to $5,000. Now, again, this is just the screen door. It's not the
Right.
actual door. But it's more of a custom made, nicer thing. And one of the things that came out of my mind was, we better live here for a while if we're going to put $3,000 into a door. And so, as you're saying 14, I was like, man, I hope they plan to stay in that home for a really long time because that would be like, in order to get your money's worth from that, it's like, even if you're there 14 years, that's $1,000 a year for the next 14 years that they will have. And so anyway, I know that this conversation is not about me, but I couldn't help but think about some of those comments that we've made back and forth. So what comes up for me mostly, Cody, is just the messaging and the psychological and emotional tie that we oftentimes find in spending something. So, when you originally were talking, I was like, sometimes we're just uncomfortable with that freedom. And I meant that. That's something that sometimes we just don't know how to be in a place of being ahead, like we've gotten so used to what's behind door number 2, which is just yuck, that when we start to smell the roses, we're like, oh no, I need the yuck back just because it's more comfortable for me. But I also hear a lot of the psychological play, like, buy right now and you'll save $4,000, but we'll never give this option again. And to that, I'm like, I'm going to call your bluff on that. If I come back, a week and a half or 3 weeks from now and say, I'd like this for $14,000 or I'm not getting it, chances are they're going to give it to you. And if they don't, oh, well, go find another company and it'll give you a similar thing for $14,000. So I think that there's, that practice needs to happen, not just between them, but also for each individual, to just kind of practice saying no to something and not getting wrapped up. And this can be seen in so many different areas. I mean, I joked with my husband the other day that I'm like, boy, you need to get off of Facebook because because they will sell you this thing that you think you really need. I'm like, and you'll buy it and then immediately want to return it because it was such a just impulse buy. And so just being able to, this happens, I share that because this happens on so many different levels. Sometimes it's, $300 and sometimes it's $14,000. But we are being sold to, and we need to have that armor of, no, like I don't need that right now. Even if I want it, I don't. I am being able to be in that negotiating position, and I can say to you, I call BS, and that's one of those things that I hear as you're talking.
Yeah, I do think so as well. And I think that his heart was in the right place. So if you don't know this guy, you might be hearing this entire conversation and you can be like, it was clearly just an impulse decision for something he wanted, right? his heart was in the right place. He was trying to do something that he felt was best for his family.
Mhm.
Truly, truly.
Mhm.
And I can say that confidently because I know him really, really well. Um, but at the end of the day, it still doesn't change the fact that that standard has now been set,
I agree.
right?
I agree when you used the air quotes and you were saying head of household. The responsibility that comes along with that is yes, if you want to be the leader, then recognize that you are leading and you're
Right.
leading the charge in what that standard is. And so I mean I do think it would be petty of her to just go and do the carpet thing, obviously.
And
And she
she
knows that as
wouldn't.
well.
She
Exactly.
wouldn't.
I mean, these sound like really, really great people. And I'm
Mhm.
actually really glad that you brought somebody to the table in our discussion that like, respect and know that they actually have done so many things really, really well.
Mhm.
Because what that shows here to all of our listeners is that we're all susceptible to this,
Mhm.
every single one of us.
Mhm.
And that these decisions are things that they don't define who we are, not as individuals and not as couples, but it does prevent or provide some real context for discussing where some of our pitfalls are. And I think that's really what this is all about,
Yeah.
recognizing where we're vulnerable, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll also say this too, and I don't know if there's going to be anything more to add beyond this. So this might be the last thing I say. But after we had that discussion and I gave in my input, I, asked him those questions. He answered those questions. And then the group also gave their input as well. Um, I basically wrapped it all together and I said, so I'll call him Joe. His name's not Joe, but I'll call him Joe. I said, so Joe, after everything that we discussed today, do you think that having this discussion is something that A, was valuable to you, and B, something that you actually really needed to have happen? And he was like, Cody, I can confidently say that when you originally brought this up, I was really uncomfortable. But after talking through it, I'm so glad that we had this conversation because now I feel like I have that perspective. Now I feel like I'm on the same page with my wife. And I know moving forward how I'm going to set that new standard, you know? Um, so I just wanted to say that because I'll even be honest with you, I wasn't looking forward to having the conversation. It's not a fun conversation. Confrontation is not fun, but we as coaches cannot avoid the confrontation. We need to sometimes even embrace it because sometimes that's where the most healing and the most magic happens is through that confrontation. Um, and that seems to be the case for this couple at least. So,
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like that's a lesson that they'll be able to take into their marriage as well.
mhm,
I mean, the confrontation came from you and the group, but it also came from his wife. I mean, if he was
yep,
sleeping on the couch
yep,
for a few days before all of this actually came out, then actually that confrontation was there as well. And I don't think though that that was the sort of confrontation that he felt good about later on. That actually brought any sort of insight to him. It
yeah,
probably was just now I feel guilty and I don't really and I was coming at this from a place of a good heart and thinking I was going to do something good for my family, but I also think that having that conversation with you and the group allowed him to see that from a different perspective and how that thing that he thought was helping his family may have just set his family back because of the cost, and now he can't go and do anything about that, and he's stuck with it, etc. And so I'm sure, not that he needs to be guilted, but once he has put his own he's identified his family as being one of his own priorities, then it will be a different lens for him to look through and say, what does it mean to actually do something good for my family? Because I
Mhm.
think sometimes, I'm not necessarily accusing him of this, but I am saying that this happens to me and to many others. Sometimes when we want something badly enough, we convince ourselves that it is the best thing for our family.
Mhm.
We are putting our priorities absolutely in order, no question. And then that outside perspective helps us to see, actually, that might not have been the best thing for the family overall. And again, it's not to shame him, it's not to guilt him, it's just to provide that perspective so that making future decisions look a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you letting me just unpack all this. Um, case studies they're always fun because they're real situations. It's not a
I agree.
concept or anything like that.
Mhm.
So I appreciate you letting me just like unpack that. And for those of you who are listening, if you're working with a couple, and this could even be, it doesn't have to be a couple, it could be just an individual, right? But if
Mhm.
you're working with some clients who maybe at some point go rogue and they make just like a huge decision that maybe isn't in their best interest, at least at least for what they're trying to accomplish, right? Um, I would urge you to not just let it slide, and to also not just be like, "Hey, why we do this?" and then
Mhm.
just talk about it and then just let it go. I would really urge you to get to the bottom of the decision making and then talk about that decision making and how we can make a shift for moving forward. Because that's why we're financial coaches. That's
Yeah.
why.
And in this case, that's the value of the $14,000 Rogue. It's
Mhm.
going to be, I mean, he might have a beautiful door by the time this is all said and done,
Sure.
but truly at the end of this, as long as he learned from this, then it's not $14,000 completely wasted.
Yeah. 100%. So, alrighty, guys. Well, thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast. And we hope to see you on next week's episode as well. Catch you then.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching.